Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.
Good morning, dear listeners. It's just Anita today. Mel texted me this morning that she's having a mind and body glitch or some sort of malfunction. So she asked me just to record by myself. And I said, okay. Even though I think it's kind of awkward just to talk into the microphone by yourself. But here we are. Bear with me as I fly solo. This week's been crazy. It's like we say the same thing over and over and over again, I feel like. But this weekend, I did a bike race. It's a relay race where you have an 8-person team and you ride. It's about 420 miles from Salt Lake to St. George in Utah. And Jason used to do this with his buddies every year. He did it many, many, many times. And they changed the team name to honor him after he died, and they've kept doing it. And this year, they asked if I would like to join and actually ride with them, which I thought was really cool. So, of course, I said yes. And we did that this weekend, and it was really a lot of fun, and also like the stupidest thing to do because you ride through the night and you don't get any sleep, and I really like to sleep. So that part of it was like, why are we doing this? This is just a really inefficient way to drive to St. George. But it was really fun to be with his friends, and we had a lot of times that we remembered, the different experiences that they had, or they told me stories. So that was really fun. What was not fun, and what threw a giant wrench in the whole cogs of the bike, I guess, is that my wallet got stolen. At some point in time, like physically somebody took the cards out of my wallet. And so I spent most of the time we were driving on the phone with banks and credit card companies and making police reports and all the stupid things that go along with that. I'm so upset about it. It feels like such a violation, and I feel stupid about it because obviously either I dropped my cards or I left them in an unsecured place, and I have to keep reminding myself that even if somebody finds your credit cards, it doesn't mean that they have to drive to the Home Depot and spend thousands of dollars. Barf. So that's what I'm dealing with. But right now I'm saving so much money, you guys, because they took every single one of my cards. So I can't really buy anything. I can't even internet shop because I'm waiting for new cards and new numbers to come. So that's good. I've done the disputes with all the credit card companies, and so all that money I'm sure is going to be reimbursed to me, but it's just a gigantic pain. I think all of us have experienced that at one time or another, but this is the first time it's been all of them at once for me. So whatever, life is just always so fun. Something that's funny about the race that Jason used to do is that one of the last times he did it, he had to come home in a hurry because I went into labor and had number 4 right after he got back. So today is my 4th child's birthday. He is 7 years old, which is so crazy because he was 2 when Jason died. And it made me feel a little sad this morning thinking about how Jason's missed out on him growing up and how he's missed out on Jason growing up. And that's a ripoff for both of them. But the kid is hilarious, and I don't know what I would do without him. However, I spent last night assembling a bike to give to him for his birthday, and he got on it, and it's too small. So that's kind of a pain. I'm going to have to fix that. And then, as he's on his way to school, he said, I can't wait for my birthday party this afternoon. And I was like, excuse me, what? I didn't plan a birthday party. And he said, yeah, Mom, don't you remember we're having a birthday party for me? And I don't remember that we're having a birthday party for him. I didn't invite anybody to a birthday party for him. I don't have anything for a birthday party for him. But apparently he told all his friends because I texted them and I said, whoops. Apparently he thought he was having a birthday party and I didn't plan one, and he might have told everybody he's having a birthday party, and all the parents are like, yep, he told us he's having a birthday party. So after I record this, I'm running to the Walmart, but first I have to go to the bank to get cash, which is so weird, so I can buy a piñata and throw an impromptu 7th birthday party for a kid I didn't know was having a birthday party. So that's what my day is going to look like. It's fall, you guys. And I know that sometimes the changing of seasons brings with it a lot of emotions. It does for me, especially in the beginning. It's not so bad now, but I'm just wondering how you guys are feeling. Do you feel sad? Do you not understand why you feel sad? Are you feeling hopeful? Let us know in the Widow Wives Club. And speaking of the Widow Wives Club, come join the Widow Wives Club if you're not part of it. It's a really great group, and we love all of the interactions and the conversations that go on in there. Make sure when you try to join, you just answer all the questions. We feel so responsible for your safety. So we're just trying to keep all the scammers and the ne'er-do-wells out of there. And believe us, there are a lot. And thank you so much to our helpers who are screening those. Sometimes it's really hard to decide if people are legit or not. And it takes some like FBI Karen to figure it out. And remember, we have an app. That is where all of the stuff will be found. That's in the app stores of the different devices. And if you want to keep the podcast going, we so appreciate all the support you guys give us. We really do rely on that to keep the podcast going, especially because the thief stole my Widow We Do Now debit card and spent $2,000 on it. So that's a bummer. Sorry, Mel. I'm getting that fixed. Anyway, it's patreon.com/WWDN. If you want to do a one-time donation, you can buy us tacos at buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww. And something that's super helpful and totally free is to just leave a 5-star rating and review at Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps people to know that the podcast is worthwhile and that it might help them. I don't think we have anything else to announce or tell you that's happening. So I'm going to go check in with Mel now. And here's the episode. I'm Anita. Mel is not here. We're 2 young widows and we're just trying to figure out widow do. It works better with 2 of us.
Do. Anita.
Yes, Mel.
We have a new friend. His name is not Pete.
I know, but maybe we'll call him not Pete this whole time. But really, this is our friend Jarie. Jarie, how do you spell your name?
Jarie.
Okay, how many percentages of the time do people call you the wrong name?
I would say, statistically speaking, it's 66.5%.
Really? A third of people get it right?
Third, and it depends on the people. Now, it's funny because everyone always says, well, where's your name come from? And I always say, well, there's the long story and the short story. And which one do you want? And they're like, well, tell us the short story. And I say, it's made up. And they're like, okay, now you got to tell me the long story. It's like, you should just ask for the long story. So the root of it's Dutch. And my grandfather, my mom's dad was named Ari, Arie. And in the Bolander clan, every son was named Jim, Jack, Joe, Jerry. So my dad, in his infinite wisdom, not knowing how teased I would get as a kid, said, I will put a J in front of Ari and it will be Jarie.
So what's funny, because we were like, we get names wrong all the time. We're like, watch us be like, it's actually Jarie. We were right. It was Jarie.
You're the few and the proud.
Also, he wrote it phonetically in his email.
Well,
Okay, but I didn't see that. I didn't see that email.
There's that.
So
Okay.
we win still.
You
Okay.
still win.
Welcome, Jarie. Nice to meet you.
You as well. You as
Where
well.
do you live?
In San Francisco, California.
All right.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's too expensive to live there. You need to leave and go somewhere
Well,
else.
I was born here, so I sort of never found a place that I liked better, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty great place. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do for fun, for work?
So for work, I was telling you guys a little bit earlier, I moved to the dark side and I do sales and marketing consulting for B2B companies, business to business companies.
Oh.
Before I did that, I used to be actually an engineer, so a geek. Used to build computer chips. So got sick of that and decided to do the easy work of trying to sell the stuff people make. And then for fun, just a lot of different things. I do jujitsu. I don't know if you're
What?
Jujitsu. Yeah, I do jujitsu. I'm a blue belt in jujitsu.
Is that good? Is a blue belt good?
It's like goes white belt, which is basic, and then blue. So I'm too into the journey, you know. I actually started that 2 weeks after Jane died, just to kind of feel a little bit more. I don't know, feel something, I think would be a good word to put it. And then, you know, I like to hike around. I like to write, just, you know, anything that kind of gets me outside and kind of gets me. Oh, I'm addicted to coffee, among other things. Well, the only thing now. So I love going to coffee shops and just drinking coffee. So
I think you're in good company there. So not only are you spending tons of money because you live in San Francisco, but then you're going to go spend all your money on expensive, tiny little cups of coffee.
Yes, but I also have the machine at home. I can get my own beans. So I usually buy the beans and do it myself, which is a ton cheaper.
Right.
Nice.
Right.
We need to hear about this Jane.
Yes, Jane.
Tell us about her and you and how you met and everything.
Wow. Well, where do I start? Well, what's really cool is we're recording this in June, right? June is Gay Pride Month. I think everyone knows that. Whoever you are in the world is sort of like everywhere, right? So I first met Jane at a gay pride breakfast. So when your gay friends drag you to a gay pride breakfast and you're single, actually at that time I was divorced, it's a long story, go, because you never know where you may meet your next wife and or partner, because for whatever reason, gay pride breakfasts are places where there's just a lot of love in the room. So I literally have a picture of the first day we met. And the reason I was there was because one of my good friends was running for office. She had a table, and the Alice B. Tolkis Gay Pride Breakfast is where everyone in San Francisco kisses the ring of all the politicians. So anyone that's anyone in politics goes to this, and it's great. I mean, they're just great people in general. And they dragged me to go to this. And at the time I was like, it was a Sunday morning at 8:00 and I was pretty hungover. I didn't want to go. But they dragged me there. And that's when we first met. And the funny thing about it is like, I was not in the mood for any kind of like romance. Or I was just pretty broken generally. The reason I was so hungover was one of the reasons I was so broken. But then after that, yeah, we just started to. I think one of the first things we did was we did a fundraiser for our friend, which was a whiskey fundraising event to raise money for her campaign. And turns out that candidate, she got elected. And then it turned out some years later, she's now the mayor of San Francisco, London Breed. So she's was the one that introduced us and married us. And now I'm happy to say she's the 45th mayor of San Francisco. So pretty cool.
You should
that's
claim
like
that.
Legit.
Yeah, that's like, I think it's all you're doing.
Yeah, well, I give her a hard time all the time. I said, well, whenever I say, oh yeah, like, well, the reason she's mayor is because of me. And maybe in some small part, but clearly the reason I met Jane was because of her. There's no doubt about that. We all agree on that.
So did you and Jane immediately start dating? Was it a bit of a slow burn, or was it like
I'd say it was
right off the bat?
Yeah, pretty quickly. It was maybe a couple of months, then we started to really date seriously. I mean, I I had been married before, and was actually in a relationship for like 18 years. Like we met in college and broke up, and it was all pretty horrible thing. So my like dating universe is like, I have no idea when like someone's hitting on me or someone likes me, right? I just think people are nice, right? So she's like, oh, let's do this and do that. And I'm like, oh, cool, whatever. And she would just joke and give me such a hard time all the time, because we would always debate when we like our first anniversary or whatever. And she's like, yeah, our first fake date. And I'm like, I would never hear the end of it. That's the way she was, right? She'd just constantly be like, you didn't even know we're on a date. I'm like, what am I? I don't know. I'm just some knucklehead.
I'm an engineer. Like,
I'm making chips for your phone.
I mean, what else am I supposed to do, right? I mean, it's even worse than that. It's like, I've never been on an online dating thing, right? So I'm completely clueless. I'm like, I literally have no idea what I'm doing. So, but yeah, it was, after that, it got pretty intensive, I guess. And we got engaged like a year after we met, and then married a year after that. I mean, it was pretty quick.
When did you guys get married?
It was in 2014. So
okay.
October 25th, 2014.
What kinds of things did you guys like to do together?
Oh, wow. It was crazy. She was a publicist for professional athletes. So what was really crazy about that was we would go to like all of these really cool events. And when I mean really cool events, I'm like with famous people, like super famous people. And so since she was a publicist, she worked with famous athletes like Marshawn Lynch, Amari Sotomayor, Yao Ming. Like, I mean, and what's crazy is like, the stereotypical like man, like, oh, you must love sports. Like, I don't really even watch sports.
Like, one of them might play basketball.
Wait, I have a question about Yao Ming. Did you come up to Yao Ming's like belt?
Kneecaps?
Yeah, he's like 7'2". He's like crazy. It's insane, right? But so we would just literally, like a power couple in San Francisco, we'd just been invited to things, and all these politicians would want us to go to these fundraisers and help them raise money. And you had a startup at the time and got into an accelerator because of her. I mean, we're just crushing it in terms of like, people just knew who we were. Like, oh, they're the Bolanders, or there's Jarie and Jane, J&J, they call us J&J. Here's J&J over there, like we were in the mix, So it was a little weird because, I mentioned before I was an engineer, and I'm like a highly functional introvert. Like, people do not energize me. I get just drained. Like, I have to act, like seriously struggle, like, oh, Jarie, you're just so good at talking to people. I'm like, yeah, well, the aftermath of that is I'm on the couch asleep because it's just too much. But
how do you do sales then? Because I'm similar to you, and it's exhausting. How do you do that?
I am behind the scenes. I'm the one that comes up with the strategy and the crazy content. Like, I write a lot, so basically, what the salespeople say is what I do, right? Like,
is that copywriting? Are you a copywriter?
Copywriting, content, strategy, sales decks, just general, like, this is how you talk about what you're doing. And you don't have to be in front of people for that. You can just sit in front of a computer. I mean, we sometimes
Yeah.
Obviously I have to talk to people, but
Got it.
it's not my
Okay.
favorite thing.
Continue. Sorry, I was
No
curious.
problem. No problem. No problem. Yeah, and we were just
Jeez.
one of these, one of these like gonna rule the world, like it's like so amazing to be in that situation. And then, like, oh my gosh, the whole world's in front of us. Right. And then, we started, we were like, okay, we're going to have kids, right? Let's have some kids. Right. And okay, cool. Let's have some kids. And then, started to try to have kids. And then she had a bunch of miscarriages in a row. And they were like, well, we don't really like, you're too young for, you should, I mean, it happens, first one's okay, it's not so bad. But then there was a second one like right after. And they were trying to figure out like what it was. And then it was like the day after Christmas in 2015, where we went to the hospital and they're like, hey, the reason why you're having all these miscarriages is because you have leukemia.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And we're like, holy wow, like, oh my God. I was like a sucker punch, like such a hit in the chest, And she was, at the time she was 34, right? So it's like 35, that's a kid's disease, but it just was one of those things where I don't, I remember the day and I remember where we were. And I just remember this, it was like it's frozen in time, And then once we kind of got over the shock of it, then it was like, okay, now what do we do? And she battled that for 15 months, in and out of hospitals, bone marrow transplant, the whole nine. And throughout the whole time, it was like, as you can imagine, pretty stressful. And, there's like, it's just, you just never know what you can do until you're faced with, okay, now what? I always say I was captain of Team Jane and my job was to make sure the MVP survived. That wasn't my job. Like no one, I talk about that in the book a little bit, where it's like, no one cared about me per se. They cared about Jane. Like, what are we going to do to cure Jane? And so you just find yourself in these situations. You're like, okay, well, I guess we're going to do what we normally do and figure it out. But it was like one of those things, again, like I can't even explain it until you've been through it, as you two have. There's the initial shock of something. And then as time goes on, you sort of, depending on if it's a long illness or a short illness or a sudden thing, there's just a different way to, it's hard to put into words, but I always say it's kind of like, you don't feel like you're in your body. You just sort of like you're floating around in this like almost video game. You're like, okay,
Yeah.
now what, So.
And why couldn't it be Tetris? Like, because Tetris is pretty easy, right?
It'd be easier.
Engineer friendly, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah.
Jarie, I'm wondering, was Jane married before? Was she divorced, or was she never in a serious relationship, or a long-term relationship, I guess I should say?
I think some long-term ones, but not a ton. I was the first man she took home to her parents. So I think that says a little bit. She was also Asian. So I didn't know this at the time, but yeah, I guess that's the protocol. Like it's only when it's serious that you're like, something's going to happen that you get to meet mom and dad. I'm like, okay, I don't even know what am I?
I feel like she fit in though, because her name started with a J, right? And that was a big deal for your family. So,
yeah.
I mean, good job with that.
Yeah. A+ on that.
You guys only had about a year of a normal, like, we're going to win the world life.
So she got diagnosed a little bit after our wedding anniversary. So about 2 years of kind of normalcy. I mean, the time I met her to the time she died was 5.5 years. I mean, it was pretty and that's what the book's about. Like, it's literally just that time frame, the memoir, right? And it's just, it seemed like we lived in it, like we lived an entire lifetime in a short amount of time. Because I mean, we went through all the things that couples go through in that short amount of time. So
that's super annoying. I'm sorry for
I know. It sucks. It's if you don't like have some perspective. I mean, part of the reason I don't drink anymore, I've been sober, 5 years now, was because of how I couldn't deal with it. I mean, just I was drinking a lot and smoking a lot of pot to sleep. And I'm just like, and I just like, this isn't helping me, man. Like, this is not good. I mean, I'm not going to live my full life if I'm just like a slave to this incredible pit in my stomach that I'm trying to fill with alcohol. I'm like, I got to find a better way, and
I have a question about that because a lot of people find themselves in that situation. Maybe they, did some pot or drank, socially or occasionally or nightly or whatever, but before the death. But then the death happened, and it's a coping mechanism that's of course, like like you said, the big pit you're trying to fill. Would you talk to us a little bit about how? I know that you said you identified it, but how did you get out of that and get into where you were sober? Because I think a lot of people face this and don't necessarily talk about it. So what would you like to say to those who maybe
yeah,
need
I
some
mean,
help?
yeah. Well, I mean, for me, it's because I met a girl or I met a woman, another, which is not, she's now my fiance. Her name's Minerva.
I'm
Um,
sorry, that's not going to work. Her name does not start with J.
Generva.
Generva.
Well, Minerva's still,
The J is silent.
the J is silent. There you go. Minerva. Yeah, she'll hate it if I say that. So I met Minerva, and it was actually a couple of months, 3 or 4 months after Jane died. And we had met each other before, like a long time ago. But one of the things that really made me kind of pause and figure out, like, what the hell am I doing with my life? In one sense, why am I drinking to like numb the pain? Was just conversations with her and realizing that I'm not going to show up as a good partner. I'm not going to be like, I'm not going to live my full life if I'm just a slave to this. And it took a good year for me to kind of like work through that. And then literally one day, I mean, I was talking to her and I'm like, I got to quit this. This is just too much. And she was really supportive and very loving and caring about it. And then, also the day Jane died, that was a Monday. That day I called a therapist that I worked with before, and I said, my wife just died. I need some help. So I went to therapy, started going to therapy. And therapy helped as well because one of the things that's really hard to do, I'm sure, as you guys know, although, you guys are both, friends, so you can kind of talk to each other, but it's hard to find people that really get it, like get what you're feeling inside and know, like, yeah, that's screwy, that's messed up. And it's just hard to talk about it. And so with therapy, it was good to talk. And I talk through, well, why am I drinking? And it was to feel something, to be honest. And there were times I was walking down the street in San Francisco and I'd wonder to myself, I wonder what it'd feel like to step in front of that bus right now, to be like, to feel something. Because I wasn't feeling, I was numb. It felt like the weight of the world was on me, like I was on the bottom of the ocean with just water and, stinging eyes. There was nothing. It was just like this nothingness. But then what would happen was during these drinking binges, after the fact, I would just get really sad. Like the lows were so low, it was to the point where like I don't know what to do, And I don't know if it was rock bottom. Maybe rock bottom might have been the word for it. But I just sort of kind of came to the conclusion that if I was going to be the best person I can be, and if I was going to really memorialize Jane in her life, that the only way to do that was to get sober and be the best person I can be and live my best life. And you know what? I'm with anyone that needs to numb themselves. Like, I get it, man. Like, there were times where I'd be like, yeah, I'm just going to have a glass of wine. And the glass of wine was a pint glass of wine, or, yeah, I'll just have a couple of tokes of the vape pen. It's 5 o'clock somewhere, right? I get it. And it's really hard because you're in acute stages of grief, the person you loved is not there, the one you relied on, if you've got kids like you have, and like, oh my gosh, you have kids, like, what are you supposed to do? Like, I had it actually a lot easier than some people. I actually had a support network. I had people that loved me and cared for me. They were close. But then in the end, it's like, what life do you want to live? Do you want to live to be a slave to this and to not value and honor the life that you love that's not here? You want to honor it that way, or do you want to honor it in a way that's going to be helpful? I mean, that's the reason why I wrote the book. That's the reason why I'm talking to you. I mean, I want to help people. I want people to know that they're not alone, because you feel, as you know, really alone. Like, I felt so alone, even when there was people around. I felt alone.
So. You're spot on in the concept of, even when you're surrounded with people, you feel like you're alone, because nobody can understand that void you're feeling. Like you said, being under the ocean and just everything pressing down on you. I'm wondering about, during Jane's treatment and during her illness, if you guys talked about the idea that it might kill her. Did you come to terms with that? Were you always in the, like, we're going to beat this realm? Or how did you deal with the possibility that it might end that way? Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions, or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Yeah, I mean, up until a week before she died, I was optimistic. I'm like, okay, this didn't work, that didn't work. Okay, I solve problems. That's my job. Like, if there's not a problem to solve, I feel like I'm not doing my job. Again, engineering mindset. But I write about in the book this one scene where we're in Santa Clara, California. We are at one of the last chemo sessions she's going to do in inpatient. And we were fighting about something, because what I would do is I would spend the night at her house. I mean, at her house, I spend the night in her room all the time. And there were just days I just don't want to be there. Like, I don't want to be anywhere near this. I just want like 5 minutes of sanity. Right. And so I'd always be like agitated and, fidgety. Like, I just want to get the hell out of here. I literally want to go vape some pot, smoke some CBD. So I calm down. And I remember we're in her hospital room, and we're like yelling at each other about something. I don't even remember what it was. And we hear a knock on the door. And it turns out it was a social worker. And the social worker comes in, and she's like, hey, my job is to just come in and talk to you guys because you're here. Am I interrupting? And I don't remember what I said, but I said something like, yeah, all Jane talks about is dying, and I'm sick of it. Like, this bullshit. Like, some swear words, right? I know it's a family show, and sorry, Mom. That's me.
They're okay. They're okay with that. They're okay with that.
That's not on them. It's on me. And so we sat down, and she just talked us through like the feelings and emotions we were having about if Jane died. And that was the first time where I'm like, oh shit, this could not go well. And the thing that was like really beautiful about what she walked us through and what she talked about was that her like, so the way Jane handled the end, like, is, I hope I hope I have as much courage as she did. Because the one thing that she was the most worried about was me. She's like, I'm worried that you're not going to handle this well. And I'm like, well, you're right. I'm not going to handle this well. Come on. You know me, right? And she's like, yeah, I'm dead. I don't care. Like, I want you to make sure that you find love again. I want to make sure that you're okay. And I'm like, well, you can't say it. Like, I'm going to be pissed off and upset and sad. She's like, I understand that. And that's okay. And the therapist or the social worker's like, basically made us realize that since we loved each other so much, we wanted the best for each other. And at that time, the best was for us to talk about what it was going to be like if she didn't make it. Mm-hmm. And that was 6 months before she died. I think it was like 6 months before she died. It was one of those conversations, which I know a lot of couples, it's hard to have. I know a lot of times it's like not a good strategy, you know, like I don't want to talk about it, right? But it's important that you talk about it and really kind of focus on the reality of where you're at, right? Like where are you? What's happening? What is the struggle that you're feeling? And I'm glad we did it. It didn't make it any easier. She ended up dying, but it was pretty it's pretty fundamental, I think. And we had talked about it a little bit before, but not in any way that was meaningful until that social worker helped us through it. And I'm forever grateful for her. Forever grateful. I write about it in the book. I don't even think I got her name right, but she was this like profound. It's probably one of the most profound moments that we had together as a couple, other than, you know, her last week. But it was pretty crazy.
The social workers, luckily, they're the best humans on the planet, so it's okay if you don't remember their name. Yeah. They'll forgive you.
Hopefully, right?
I think so. I mean, you know, when you're part of the medical system, you're like, you know, why do they have social workers? Why do they have a doctor? Why do they have a nurse? And then you realize, oh, the reason they have social workers is because doctors think of you as a meat puppet, and literally, like, you're a problem to solve. And they have to do that, because if they didn't, they couldn't do their job. And so you get angry at them for being like, well, we're in the, you know, like figuring the puzzle out. But then you're like, well, you know what? There's 7 other patients that are in the same position. This person is going to probably have to have the same conversation about, okay, what do we do now that this stuff's not working, in order for them to just even get through the day. They must feel like, okay, you know, like I got to detach.
Yeah, that would not be a fun job.
Not my job. That would not be my number one job ever.
So I'm wondering about, after Jane died, you alluded to the fact that you started doing jujitsu. Mm-hmm. What other things did you find yourself trying to do to cope? And were you able to connect with any other, especially males, in your same situation? Because I feel like that's even a little bit harder. So you're young, you're widowed, and you're a man. And I feel like those 3 things are even harder to find a support network for than some other groups.
Yeah, you're pretty much a unicorn. I feel like no one, like, oh, who is this guy? I mean, did jujitsu. I tried to get out as much as I could. I mean, I drank a lot. That was one thing I did. I don't recommend it. I tried to hang out with friends. You know, I ended up starting a foundation in her name, doing a bunch of work there. You know, as you know, there's just a lot of stuff you have to do you never would know about. Like, oh, we didn't put that in the right spot, or hey, wasn't in the trust, so now it's got to go through probate. Now I got to get a lawyer, and you're just like, I don't really, like, got to change all these things. So, and I had and what was interesting is that when she got sick, I ended up running her business. So one of the things we decided, I wanted to shut it down, to be honest. I'm like, we just got to focus on you. And she's like, no, I'm going to get better, and then I'm going to run it. For now, you need to run my business. So that was how I got introduced to the dark side of PR, marketing, and strategic communications through her. So I literally was running her business while she was sick. So after she died, I still ran it. In fact, I ran it up until about a year ago. So yeah, and part of it was, I think, just her legacy reminded me of her. Part of it was I needed to make a living that was flexible. If I would have got like a day job, like no one would understand. Like no one, and even now, no one understands. Anytime I bring it up, I mean, and I talk about it a lot. I mean, I wrote a whole book on it, right? If you don't think I want to talk about it, why would I write an entire book about it? So for those of you who are like, I didn't want to talk to Jarie because I didn't know what he wanted to talk about, I wrote a book, so you can now read the book and talk to me about it, right? But you know what I mean? So it's like, I just, I had to have that like flexibility. So it was running her business and doing the work, and I was just like doing the work, and one of the things that was part of my addiction would probably be the right word. Yeah, probably addiction is I'm an endurance athlete as well. So, Ironmans, endurance events, triathletes, like anything I could do to just like numb it to the extreme. And there's reasons for that go beyond just Jane time. There's how I grew up and everything, but how we deal with trauma and grief and loss has a lot to do with how we, grew up. So I just would just dive into that and just try to make it to 5 so I could have a drink, to be honest, and then pass out in front of the TV and then rinse and repeat. It took me like 3, couple years after being sober to like realize, oh, that probably wasn't a very good way to go. But again, what can you do? You do what you know how to do. I think that's part of the thing that's really what I want to kind of get across is like, if you know someone that's suffering or has had a loss, their spouse died, their kid died, or whatever, and you don't know what to do, I mean, just being normal is probably the best thing to do. I just loved it when someone didn't talk about Jane dying. I was like, I appreciate, like, can I just be a normal human for like 5 minutes? So.
No, the answer is no. You may not. So sorry. So she died in what year?
2017.
2017. So it's been about 6 years.
Yeah, she died April 3rd, 2017.
That's the day after my birthday. I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
that you missed my birthday.
Yeah, I know.
Just kidding.
Now I'll remember that forever.
Right? So, Jarie, you wrote a book, like you've mentioned. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so the name of the book is Ride or Die, Loving Through Tragedy, A Husband's Memoir. And it's about Jane and I's relationship and her battle with leukemia and just how we handled it and dealt with it. And I really wanted to kind of get it on the page so it's out of my head. I think one of the most challenging things, as you know, is when you talk about it, people like, they don't know what to say. They're just like, yeah, sorry for your loss. Yeah. And then you're like, I want a little more than that. So I wanted to do a little more than that, and it's just really, part of the thing. I didn't want to like move on from it. I think that's the wrong word. I wanted to move through it and kind of close that chapter of my life and make it like, hey, it lives forever, right? Like I don't have to repeat the story. Like, here's the story. This is the way the story works. And it was also very healing, Yeah.
Question.
Sure.
Does it have pictures in it?
It does not have pictures in it. It does.
Okay, that's okay.
It does not.
I'll forgive you.
Mel wants it to be a graphic novel.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe the next one I write. But no, I think it was, I don't know. Maybe correct me if I'm, well, not correct me. I mean, I wonder if this is your experience too. The more you talk about it, the less scary it gets. Does that?
Well, we talk about it all the time. So.
I feel like I've talked about all the hard parts so much that it's the actual enjoyable parts of my relationship with my dead spouse that are harder for me to access because I'm so used to talking about the grief and the all those things. So they're kind of just like commonplace.
Yeah.
Sounds strange. Yeah. What have you found?
Yeah. And then I also like to remember the good things too. Like it's Scott, right? Scott was your husband.
Good job.
Well, I try.
Thank
What
you.
was the best thing about Scott?
Scott was everybody's best friend.
Oh, cool.
So like the community mourned openly and very loudly. He's in the theater community. So
Did you
Okay.
hear that thunder that just boomed when you said that?
Scott's like, I live in the thunder.
Well, they do. I mean, they live through us, right?
Yeah. And I was telling someone today, like, yeah, Scott, when people came to his funeral, his family, specifically his parents, had no idea how many friends he had. Like they knew he was loved.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, it was, that the amount of love that he gave out to others was like 100-fold shown to the family at the funeral. So I loved that Scott really was a good human to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, there were more people at Jane's celebration of life than our wedding.
Hmm.
It's quite the
But did you have number one, an open bar at the celebration of life?
Of
And did you
course.
feed? Okay, I was gonna
Of
say,
course.
well, never
I
mind then.
I
I was
was
gonna say,
my job is PR marketing and throwing events, and Jane threw tons of events. So it was like the pressure's on. Like I can't make a crappy event.
I would have been like, you guys, y'all can bring your own drinks. I am not planning an event for you. This sucks. So, but good job. I guess I
what
can't.
what about for you, Anita? What
What
about
was the best thing about Jason?
yeah, what's the best thing about Jason?
Jason has a lot of things that I really love about him, but when I have to distill it down to one thing, which is going to be a funny thing to say, but I loved that Jason would be silly with me. Like Jason was a big guy. He looked like a biker, scary guy, and he was the silliest person that you've ever met. Like
Aw.
we just would laugh and joke and be silly and dance around, and our kids were just horrified at us all the time. And he was also super kind. Like our neighbor moved in and she thought that she had moved in next to a Hell's Angel,
Yeah,
and then she's like, I couldn't have been more wrong. He
yeah.
was the pool mom in the summer. I was like, I don't want to take care of our kids. He'd be like, I'll go to the pool with them. Yeah. He was
Aw.
just fun, funny. And like Mel's Scott, he also, everybody was his friend. He was the life of the party. So yeah.
Yeah.
Stupid dying people.
I know. I know. There
Leaving us
days.
here
Yeah.
to write books,
Yeah.
podcast,
Yeah.
like
Well, I mean,
whatever.
there's days, I'm sure you have the same thing where I'm just like I'm mad at her. And it's not her fault, but I'm
Right.
mad at her. It's like, really, thanks. But
Yeah. I
then
definitely get upset that I'm in the situation I'm in very often because of the death. I have a question for you too, because you mentioned you have a fiance. How has it been for you to repartner? That's another thing that can be kind of triggering. It's hard in some ways for both people.
yeah, I mean, Minerva's a saint. That's all I can say. I mean, she got this widower. Oh gosh, like what are you thinking? This
I know.
knucklehead, right?
Is she going to be okay? Does she have a therapist?
Yeah, she's great. She's solid. She's actually has a daughter too, so soon to be a stepfather, which is even more interesting and cool in ways that I never knew. I mean, I just am blown away, right? Uh, well, what's interesting is like I really loved being married and being in a relationship. I mean, to me it was just a joy. So, I when I got lucky enough to meet her, and it was again a couple months after, 3 or 4 months after, it was pretty quick. One of the things that was just really striking to me was that I was just so it was hard. So there are a couple of things, right? One, it's hard because of course this new person's got to, there's the old person that's not here anymore, and of course you talk about them, you write books about them, people want to know. I mean, it's like but she was really kind and very considerate and thoughtful and loving about it. And I remember one time I'm just sitting there going, this whole Jane thing, are you okay with this? And she just looks at me, she's like, it would be creepy if you were not still in love with your dead wife. And I'm all, oh, well, I guess that's why I love you. So I'm like, you're right. And it's been a challenge. I will not, there's no minced words about it. There's just days where it's like, she's different, right? People are different. You're never going to get back what you had. You hopefully get something better. And then what we're building is to me, is something better. I mean, it's better as best it can be, and it was odd and awkward. And, I was really didn't know what to do, again, like I didn't date much. I had been in relationships my whole adult life, never been on a dating app. So I don't know what I'm doing. Right. But I think it was, for me, very natural to find someone else because I really missed that. But also, I really grappled with how to deal with it and actually be respectful to her, because there's a certain part of it, right? Like you have to hold space for your spouse that's no longer here, and then this new relationship that you want to, which what your dead spouse wanted you to be.
Sorry, there's just like the biggest claps of thunder that keep happening at our house.
How many miles away do we live? 3?
Yeah.
We both just had the same thunder at the same time. When you said that, what is going on? Sorry to interrupt you.
Must be Jane, Scott, and Jason.
They're having fun.
Fun going. There are days where you see, I mean, I don't know if you guys see this too, but just see the beauty in the world through their eyes. Like, oh, they would have loved that. Or just remind you of this, like, oh, I remember. And then you just have a warm moment in your heart. And then you're like, I wish they were here. And then now for me, it's like, oh, I want to now share this with others, how beautiful it was. Which I think, I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just me. I'm a little sentimental, maybe a little more emotional than most men. But I think to your question before about men's groups, there's none. We don't talk about it. We either just drink ourselves to death or shoot ourselves in the head with a bullet. That kind of people. I mean, it's true. All the grief groups I was with were just predominantly women, and they were great, but they had no clue what I was going through, like zero. I just like, I don't even know how to, I mean, I don't know what to do. And we're horrible at that. Absolutely. I hope one of the other reasons I wrote the book was that if you are someone that loves a man that's going through these sort of things, that you actually can now understand what's going on in their head so you can help them. And I'm sure it's obviously with other folks as well, similar, but it's like a crazy, I don't even forgot what we were talking about. Sorry.
Well, I think that's really important too, because there are a lot of people that, well, first of all, it's hard for men and women to understand each other. It's hard for humans to understand each other regardless. And so I think that's really, really mindful of you to present it that way as well. It's a memoir of you and your life with Jane, but it also is meant to help others to understand and have a better understanding of what it's like, so that maybe their relationships can thrive instead of like hitting some of the speed bumps, or at least they're aware of what could be going through people's minds.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not perfect. No one is. It's my opinion, right? My experience with all its flaws. But I think the conversation is what we don't have, like what we're talking about right here. Like hardly ever happens in any meaningful way. I remember I saw like one of your resources on one of the books is by Jenny Lisk, who is a future widow, who I know a little bit about. And it's just funny because, those people that talk about it, people put them in a weird spot, right? And then you're kind of like, well, I'm more than that, but I'm talking about this because no one else is talking about this. So I just hope, that being able to have conversations like this, meaningful, have a little bit of levity, life goes on, right? Like it's horrible, but I think the people in our lives that we no longer can hug and touch want us to lead better lives. I mean, they don't want us to suffer. I know Jane, she flat out told me, I do not want you to do what you're going to do. I'm like, what does that mean?
She's like, I know. I already know.
I know how much you drink, right?
So, Jarie, right after Jane died, did you feel like there would be a time where you were living a meaningful life again? And are you living a meaningful life now? And what's giving you meaning? That was a 3-part question. If you can keep track of all of that, you get a gold star.
Oh, wow. Gold star is cool.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
first part of that question is, did I think I'd find any meaning after
Mm-hmm.
she died?
Immediately after.
Immediately
Yeah.
after. The literal day she died, I wrote a scene in this book. And the reason I did it was because I'm like, I need to remember what this feels like, because I just don't know if I'm going to remember her. I was afraid I was going to forget her. And not in the sense that the pain was like is always going to be there, but that like over time she would fade away, right? So I was afraid of that, which sounds weird. I know it seems silly. The emotion and meaning I felt at the time, which I didn't know this at the time, it actually took one of my mentors and one of my coaches, my memoir coach, to say, you really need to find the emotion and meaning in that event, because that's part of your life. So it took me, so at that point I thought, what do I do? I had no idea I had no idea what I needed to do, other than, okay, I need to call the funeral home. Okay, I need to set up her celebration of life. This is all tactical. And it took a couple years of therapy, a year after quitting drinking, where I decided that like the meaning in life was that I got another day. Like every day is precious. And even if it's a bad day, and believe me, I have bad days. I'm very curmudgeon-y. I bias negative. Everyone will tell you that. I can rant like Bill Burr. Like I am that level rant, right? And it's like it's a shtick, but it's also that's the way I am. And meaning a couple years after was, I get another day. I should use this day wisely. I really should, because Jane didn't get another day, and other people that have died haven't gotten another day. Jason didn't get another day. Scott didn't get another day, right? And I think now meaning in my life is derived from doing the best I can every day to live that day. And again, I am not perfect. Have tons of flaws. I am like, you just talk to anyone I know, right? But the meaning I have in life now relates to how to live the best life I can, given that I have limited days left. And part of that's writing about my experience. Part of that is talking to folks like you. Part of that, what gives me meaning is just like my mission in life now. If I was to like encapsulate it, is, I should work towards building better men.
Mic drop. That's great. Jarie, we have really enjoyed talking to you today and meeting you and hearing your story. Will you please let us know where we can find your book?
It's on Amazon. It's on Barnes & Noble. It's on bookshop.org. If you're into independent bookstores, which I am, and Jane is, and Minerva is, we love books. You can look at all that stuff at jariebolander.com, which is where my author thing is, which is super odd and weird.
The author thing. I like how you're describing it. Your introvert's coming out.
Yeah. It's like, I'm
you're like,
that
no,
guy.
no, I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, a website that's his name, right? Like, this is horrible, right?
Tell us again what the name is.
Oh, Ride or Die.
Ride or Die. So, okay, we will link to that in the show notes. We'll link to your site, and then people can find the pre-order from there. Or if you're listening to this episode after September 2023, you can find it now. All the places that he just mentioned.
Would very much appreciate it. I hope that if you do know someone that's obviously going through some tough times, I hope it helps. I think it has. It was funny. I have advanced reader copies of which if you know anything about books, you send out to publicists or whatever. And a good friend of mine, his sister had a friend whose wife died like a month ago, and tragic, the whole thing. And, she's like, oh, I want to get Jarie's book and everything like that. And I'm like, oh, great, cool. And it was really kind of odd. I'm talking to him and I'm like, well, let me just mail him the advanced one. And he's like, well, I don't think he'll be ready to read it. I go, well, just know that I'm thinking about him, right? And it actually chokes me up a little bit because I wish there's times, I'm sure you wish someone would like do something that would like understand you. And the other day he read me a text from her saying that he's halfway through it. So thankful that you gave it to him. It's helping him get through a hard time.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh my God. I mean, tears me up. Like, it's just, that's what I want it to do. And if just helping that one person is worth it. So,
yeah. Jarie, we've come to the time where we need to ask you the most important of the questions. That is, what is your favorite cheese? And would you or would you not eat green eggs and ham?
Okay. So that's a tricky question on the favorite cheese.
Okay. That's okay.
Because I'm Dutch.
We just were actually in Amsterdam a couple weeks ago, and we learned that we've been saying Gouda wrong for our whole lives.
Gouda. So if you want to speak Dutch properly,
you have to get.
You need to make sure you've got a good phlegm ball in your throat, and you got to. That's what my grandmother would say. Otherwise, so whereas Gouda is good, I like Manchego. Manchego is really...
You're a traitor to your country because Manchego is Spanish.
I know, but this funny story, my grandmother, Dutch, tall woman, at the time blonde, but she had brown eyes. And you're like, what Dutch people have brown eyes? And you're like, the ones that were conquered by the Spanish.
Okay. We'll give
it a little bit of Spanish, I think. way back. And then would I eat green eggs and ham? Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Dr. Seuss. In fact, you can't see it, I have a tattoo of a Dr. Seuss cuttlefish that were the story. One of the first times Jane and I went to Napa, we went to this art gallery and they had the cuttlefish. You could buy it, you buy the prints. And I wanted to impress her, so I bought one. And then when she died, I got the tattoo. So anyway, but yeah, I'm a fan. So yeah, of course I eat green egg. 100%.
All right. You've passed our quiz. Thank you so much for your time and chatting with us a little bit about your story and for the time it took for you to write a book, because I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to meet both of you and hear a little bit about Jason and Scott. It's just... just keep on doing the great work.
Thanks for asking us.
Of course. Yeah. I love hearing. I should have asked you, like, what are the things you hated about them, but
we could have talked about that too.
Yeah. Can you hit stop and I could tell you all that stuff about
Yeah. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that you've loved this episode. If you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos, go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww.
And if neither of those things work, give us a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps people to find us when they need us and the algorithms and all those things that we don't understand. And until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
And I'm Jarie.
And we are just two young widows and one young widower who's not Jory, not Jerry, not Jarie.
Jarie.
But Jarie. And we're all just trying to figure out widow.
We
do
now. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks, and so you don't have to pay extra for that, and you still get great service.
Yep. Anita and I have traveled all over, and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it. If you're on a budget or not, who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys. Such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.